Welcome to the Let Me Save You 25-Year podcast, where we break down a new Shawnism each week. Each one of these is a little lesson I've learned along the way in hopes that you can maybe learn from my mistakes and build great things even bigger, better, and faster than I ever did, perhaps shaving off a decade or two on your own journey. My book, Let Me Save You 25 Years, where today's topic comes from, is intentionally really short. So think of this as the long version of the book where we can go even deeper into the Shawnisms that each chapter is based on. Just like our topic today, there is always a way. Please give the podcast a like, a follow, share it out with your friends, wherever you listen to podcasts. Please do it now in the spirit of the number one Shawnism, right? Get off the couch. Just do something. Give this podcast a follow. There is always a way, okay? The book writes it like this. No truer statement exists. It doesn't matter what the problem is. It doesn't matter what industry, category, situation, subject matter, project, or profession. There may be compromises. There may be trade-offs required. There may be a price to pay. But there is always a way. If it has been done, it can be done. If someone else has done it, then why not me? Oh man, this is a Shawnism for the ages. So in my case, the story I share in the book that leads into this is where we had to stuff 12,000 little love sacks in time for Christmas. And the technology that we were aware of at the time was the dumb little electric motor powered grain grinder shredder from the 1970s that we were borrowing from this furniture factory at the time. And I drove out to farm country to find more of these grain grinders. It's kind of like a wood chipper, like when you feed sticks into a wood chipper in the backyard. It's like a machine kind of like that, but it had been converted with an electric motor, so we could plug it into the wall and turn the thing on and use it inside of a factory. Anyway, I said to the farmer guys, 3 hours outside of Salt Lake City, I said, do you have anything bigger? Because he showed me these little chippers they had. He said, oh yeah. And he shows me this thing called a hay buster, which is like this giant hay shredder meant to shred those 2,000-pound rolls of hay you'll see on a farm. I mean, you can forklift the whole thing up into there and it'll shred this thing. This guy has seen it shred 2x4s, tables, barn wood. So I drive 3 hours back home to get a big bag of foam. 3 hours back to farm country the next day. Rock chips in the windshield from these long drives. Anyway, we throw this big bag. He gets it going. Bear in mind, it's powered by a tractor. So this guy pulls this thing around by a tractor. It has this power takeoff, kind of like a driveline coming off the back of the tractor. Full-size John Deere farm tractor turning the guts of this shredder from its diesel motor. And we throw this bag of foam up into its bin. It's like a giant bowl on top that spins around. And as it spins, like it'll push whatever you have over the blades that are spinning in the bottom. And in this case, it just like killed the hay buster, dead. And this farmer was like, whoa, well, that's a new one. He'd never seen this thing die like that. Like stall the tractor out. And what had happened is the foam was stretchy and, didn't break like a 2x4 would. And so the shredder just didn't work. But, he's scratching his head and crawled up in there and looked at it and unjammed it with a crowbar and pulled the foam out and said, I think we can make this work. We just got to make some adjustments. So come back later with another bag of this foam and we'll try again. So we drive 3 hours back to Salt Lake, get another bag of scrap foam. So these scraps, they're anywhere from the size of a sofa cushion to just, football size strips of foam from leftover from when this couch company makes couches. We take another plastic bag, the size of the bed of the truck, all the way out into the farmland, again, 3 hours back. And this time, he's built a little adjustment into the blades. We're going to ramp the tractor up to like full throttle. We're going to run it at higher RPMs. he's taken out a few of the blades to space them a little differently. And sure enough, this thing, bag goes in, shreds it, but it spits it all out of the top like a popcorn popper. And it won't come out of the bottom and then out of the conveyor belt like it's supposed to. So once again, this farmer was like, what? I've never seen this. 3 hours back home, another load of foam in the back of the truck, come back up a couple days later. And this time, as we discussed with this farmer, he's built a plywood lid on top of the hay buster that will keep the foam in from bouncing out, because the foam's super light, unlike the hay or the wood chips that would just fall down through the blades after it's shredded. This time, the thing shakes around and shimmies and almost kills the tractor, but this time the foam comes just pouring out of the conveyor belt. And we're like jumping up and down, hugging. She's like, oh my gosh. And so, this was our first heavy foray into the territory of the Shawnism that this chapter is named after. There is always a way. Listen, there is always a way. Like, we could not afford a $500,000 German shredder. That was not even on the table. Like, there was the idea of getting financing for proper factory equipment. Bear in mind, we're in a factory that we're kind of borrowing. We leased it, but it's like 1890s it was built, wood floors. All we could afford is from a cash advance from the money borrowed on credit cards from the ATM to just afford to be in this factory. And so it's not just that of course there's always a machine that'll shred foam, but is there a way to shred literally tons of foam for this big order on a budget we could afford? Yes, the answer is there is always a way. And we found a way to afford, through an agricultural loan from the US government, this 1970s haybuster powered by a 1970s tractor that we could buy from this farmer on monthly payments. And with the help of the US government for agricultural equipment, we brought this thing to downtown Salt Lake City, spun up a factory around it. And I've got 100 other examples of insurmountable problems where our attitude was, there is always a way. And we're going to talk to a guest today who has faced insurmountable, unwinnable situations and found a way to win. Because that is the attitude. That is his attitude. That is my attitude. There is always a way. Holy cow. So you guys are now loving life down on the water. How's Nikki and Gigi?
Nikki's got 3 children. She's 32.
Oh my God.
Believe it or not. She's got a 6-year-old, 4-year-old, and 1-year-old. Gigi just had a baby girl 6 weeks ago, and they're both happily married to great people. And my son, who was a peanut back then, probably 2 or 3 years old, he's 24, and he's getting married in a month in June.
Congratulations, man. You did it.
So Meyer family is expanding as we talk. It's awesome, though.
That's so cool, man. I'm so happy for you. I mean, all of the accolades that you're used to aside, you and I probably both know there's life and then there's real life. So.
Well, I'm happy for you, man. I followed you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been a long road, as you know, and a crazy story. And you read some of it probably, and you followed some of it. But yeah, you had an impact on my life. I'll share that when we get into the meat of it. But
tell me about your kids.
Yeah, so I've got 4. They are now. Quickly 15. I can barely spit that out. 15, 13, 11, and 9. And, growing up fast, but in a fun stage, because we can do anything, everything. We try and have lots of adventures, and it's tricky because, probably like you wrestled with, I've thought a few times about, I probably could have taken all my chips off the table, but it's fun to be also working. I don't know. How do you make these decisions? You've had to make a lot of them, but still at the grind, and believe it or not, Lovesac has the potential to get really big, and more importantly, I think do really cool things. with the way that we're approaching things, things that can be with you forever. And really glad that you're a customer. That's like one of my claims to fame. I love it. It's amazing.
Yeah, we have 2 of them in the house.
Yeah.
As we speak.
So cool, man.
Our kids, we love them.
Totally flattered. And I'm guessing with all those grandkids now running around, you've already experienced the benefits of washable, changeable covers, all that stuff.
Yeah. Over many, many years.
Yeah. So, all right. And I asked this to everyone. What is the craziest thing, goofiest, funniest, weirdest thing you've seen, I don't know, over the last month, online, in your own life, in real life? First thing that comes to mind.
Oh, it has to be my grandkids, just seeing, they'll be, I got a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, and they are all they are all maniacs. They're like their father was, like their grandfather was. And we're sitting there FaceTiming with our little 1-year-old daughter, and then all of a sudden he comes running in front of the camera phone and drops his pants, and you just, you don't know what, we both look at each other and just die laughing.
That's amazing.
But you know what? That's what tells you, kids, let kids be kids, man.
That's right. That's right. You were right.
So that's a great joy watching them grow up.
Yeah, right. You and me just get canceled for behavior like that, right? So like,
oh, we're done. You're done. I'm beyond done.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I love it. Thanks for sharing. All right, cool. Well, here we go. Welcome to the Let Me Save You 25-Year podcast, where we break down a new Shawnism each week in hopes that you can maybe learn from my mistakes and build great things even bigger, better, faster than I ever did, perhaps shaving off a decade or two. My book of the same name is coming out soon, so stay tuned. I am your host, Shawn D. Nelson, founder of Lovesack, and with me today is one of the most iconic, uncompromising, controversial, famous, infamous, 3-time national champion and top 3 winningest football coaches of all time. Even while showing up as a role model, leader, husband, and father of 2 very successful daughters, a son, all these grandkids now, fan and longtime user of Lovesack, Sactionals, the whole bit, a good friend of mine and personal mentor, if only from a distance, Mr. Urban Meyer. What's up?
Shawn, great to see you, brother.
Oh my gosh, so good to be with you. So grateful to have you here. And you get to rap with me around my 8th on the list of 25 Shawnisms, one of my, maybe my top favorite. There is always a way. There is always a way. And I felt like, I actually had another one in mind for you. And then I reviewed all my Shawnisms, and I'm like, oh my gosh, man, if I got anyone on planet Earth to chat with me about this Shawnism, it's Mr. Urban Meyer. So.
Well, I read through your book, and we were ready to talk about another topic, but there's always a way, and that kind of hit home with me. I thought the previous one about, we can sweep the floor, you just basically you got to do what you got to do to get it done. But there's always a way. I think when I think about your career and ours, it's somewhat mirrored. It's ironically, it's also started about 15, whenever that was, 2004, 2003, 2004, right. You're young, some young guy creating this company, and I remember going, boy, is this really going to work? And then I meet you, and I go, it's going to work.
Oh, cool.
Because he'll make it work. And I took on a big job at University of Utah. It was a great place. It's always been a great place, but it's never really took off like it had, like it did when we were there.
For
and
sure.
I think when you say there's always a way, that really hit home with me. And to me, it's about you're going to win. You're going to set a standard. And the one thing that I always say, and I actually had it above my staff room door, was I'm interested in solutions, not the problem. Don't be that person on your staff that's the problem guy. It's always going to tell you, come in and tell me how you solve the problem before you even have identify the problem.
Yeah. That's
what a great associate does. Fix it, and then, by the way, say, here's a little issue I was dealing with. Here's how I solved it. That makes, first of all, you got a heck of a team and a culture if you do that.
Yeah, man. Well, there's so much to unpack. Urban is a culture builder. It's like, that's one thing I love about doing this podcast. I get to talk to people from all sorts of different backgrounds, but in the end, it's kind of all the same, man. Business, football, uh, building a team, building a team in business, building a team in football. These principles are sort of timeless and universal. And so I want to get into that. I think, man, as head coach, a little bit like, not so different than a CEO for sure. Often even, better pay. But as a head coach, you have to, I talk about so many things in the book. One of these things I talk about is like people need to complain. Like it's something I learned when I was younger. It took me a while. I used to try and fix everything. People come in, like you said, to your office complaining about something or having some kind of problem. And I kind of learned to eventually let that just roll off, stop trying to fix everything. But the real top teammates are the ones that, like you said, don't just bring you a problem, but to your point, have already, they may say this is the problem and here's what we're going to do to fix it. I think like that ability is so rare, actually.
And I think, Shawn, what I started doing as my career progressed is you have people on your staff that I always rated everybody 1 through 5.
Mm.
And a 1 means, and we didn't have any 1s. 1s are, below average. 2's, just not quite good enough. 3's average. 4's good. And then 5's elite. And then every year I would meet with my athletic director and I would give him the 5's. And that means that whatever we have to do, we have to keep this person. Because, not everybody's treated the same. And, that's capitalism. That's the American way. That's, you got certain people on your staff that you cannot do without.
Mm.
And when I had struggles at times was when I would lose those 5's.
Mm.
Because it's like a great player. If you don't replace a great quarterback with another great quarterback, it's science. You're not going to be as good. If you lose that great staff member and you don't replace him with another great staff member, that just wears you out as a leader. And so when you talk about a gal that, it makes you feel like $1 million when that person walks in and the problem's already solved. And they solved it. But it's their responsibility to let me know how it went down and how I can assist. But the person that comes in and says, we got this problem, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks, and you're like, wait a minute.
Right.
Those to me are not the elite.
Well, I feel like
people you work with.
I feel like those people, they think they're being helpful and they are being helpful by identifying issues and being candid about things, not hiding it. I mean, in fairness, CEOs, head coaches, what have you, leaders, there's often that blindness that comes because people are afraid to share bad news. It's written about quite a bit. So that's useful. That's like a 3 or a 4 behavior, but it's that 5 behavior kicks in, right? When someone's willing to pre-pack, solve the solution, bring it to you or bring you 2 or 3 options. I mean, that's just so above average and it comes naturally to some people, but I think mostly it has to be developed and coached. How did you coach? So how would you coach someone from a 3 or 4 to a 5 then? Did you ever have to kind of do that?
Yeah. Shawn, I wasn't one of those people that fired people. In my 18 years as a head coach, I fired 1 person.
Wow.
When I tell people that, they're like, really?
Wow.
And I say, yeah, I don't know. There's something that, and I'm not saying that's the best decision. There's some things I would like to redo and some situations maybe, but I just believed I wanted people to I wanted it to be a tough environment. You've seen our environments. It's a very competitive environment. I treat everybody, you get the best of the best. Hopefully, even including salary-wise, I believe people should be taken care of in that regard. But I also want to make sure that there's a standard there. And then if they don't live up to that standard, I try to make it so they leave on their own. I want to do, a legacy is when and I'm talking player and staff, is when that person is much better when they leave than when they got there.
Mm.
And the University of Utah, the University of Florida, the University of Ohio State University, and the one before that, Bowling Green, we had a very clear standard. And if you couldn't live up to that standard, we're going to give you every possible way to improve and get to that standard. We would call it professional development, Shawn. That means I'd send you to go If it's leadership, I'm going to send you to a leadership workshop. If it's technical skills, I'm going to send you there. If it's a recruiting office and we weren't quite where we need to be, I'm going to go send you somewhere that's doing it a little bit better than we are.
Wow.
And you're going to learn. So I was constantly pushing. It wasn't this. I just have always had a hard time. I worked in a situation where, the head coach would just fire people a lot. It created fear, anxiety, covering things up like you discussed earlier. And I didn't want that. I wanted people to strap it on and go to work every day. But I also did not want that, the fear of, my gosh, is the guy going to fire me? I've never really fired anyone. Now, there's going to be accountability and we're going to make you better. And that's really the same thought I had with the most important people, the players.
Wow. Lot of wisdom packed into that, man. So to catch people up, the way I met Urban was, so in 2003, 4, 5, that time period, when he found his way to the University of Utah, which was like a coup, a miracle to get a caliber of coach like you out there. And there were, like you said, to me, low expectations, but, plenty of potential, and went undefeated. And in that period of time, he's in Salt Lake, blowing up, doing big things at my university. You know this now from reading at Urban. Lovesac literally began on the lawn at the University of Utah. Like, we were selling sacks on the lawn when I was there a few years prior. We had become, a medium-sized company or something. I don't know. We had 30, 40 locations when I met you. We were blowing up. Celebrities were buying our stuff. And we had no Sactionals. It was just the sack, but it was all this fervor. And I don't know, our PR team, of course, big U of U fans got us in with you guys. Your team, you put us in the locker room. You had sacks all throughout. It was so cool. We joked about your guys working out with Shrunken Love Sack, these 100-pound duffel bags. Like, what could we do? We could do, like, make them roll them down the field. Like, we had so much fun brainstorming. But and then you invited me to be on the field a couple times for those games, and it was just so cool to be around it. And so we became loose friends. I remember begging your wife from the stands, like, don't leave us toward the end, because you of course had every offer in the world and you had to take them. But anyway, so that's kind of how we cross paths. But there are so many things I want to unpack from the things you just said. But just to go to probably the most impactful impression you made on me, that stuck with me then when I took over as a coach of my kids' soccer teams, hopefully not totally insane, dad coach, but I gave them 2 rules. And honestly, I felt like even though these were not your rules, they were inspired by your behavior for me. And it was maximum effort, because these are little, 7, 8, 9-year-olds at the time and growing into 12-year-olds. I coached them for a few years. Maximum effort and winning attitude, right? And no matter what we're doing, even if it's warming up, it's maximum effort all the time. I don't care how good you are. I don't care your skill level. I want maximum effort and winning attitude. And I taught these little kids the idea that I don't care how good you've heard that team is. I don't care how much they beat us by last or whatever it may be. We are going to win this game. In fact, we're going to win every game. And man, that was such an attitudinal mindset that I drew from you. And I don't even know whether you ever said words like that to your own teams and whatnot, but that's the vibe I got, because when you left, the coach that took over, who's been amazing, one of the most winningest coaches as well, but in a different way. I remember the first speech he gave, and this is where I saw the difference, was sort of like, hey, we're going to have a great year. We're going to kind of, we're going to build a good program. We're moving into the Pac-12. We're going to win some. We're going to lose some. And for me, like, that was it. Like, as great as the Utes have done, even since your departure, you were undefeated, man. And look, there's obviously always some, who knows, luck involved and timing and all this other stuff that I think any humble person would, I'm sure, but it doesn't matter. The attitude was, right, we are going to win every game.
You know, it's the word maximum effort. I think that's God's gift to us. You know, He makes people big, tall, short, sometimes overweight, sometimes, you know, not as fast. Sometimes, you know, everybody's got, I don't believe God makes mistakes. And the one thing He does give you is He gives you freedom of choice. And it's your choice. And if you want to be great, be great.
Mm.
And I always wanted a team. One of the greatest compliments I ever got, Shawn, was we're playing John Robinson. He was a great coach of the LA Rams, won a Super Bowl, of the USC Trojans, won a national title, and he's at UNLV. And we're playing him one day at UNLV, and he looks at me. We go out and shake hands before the game, and here's the legend. I'm a young coach, 30, whatever I am, years old. Here's John Robinson.
Mm.
And he looks right at me. He says, Coach, he goes, I don't know how you guys do it. That's the fastest team I've ever coached against. And I'm thinking to myself, we have maybe one player that runs in the 4.5s. We weren't physically that fast. Mm. But my dream has always been to have whatever, to be an organization, a business, a team, a church, whatever I'm around, my family. I want people to be fearless. I don't want, you know, this has never been more true in this society we're in now about mistakes. You just get crushed for mistakes. You know, a great team plays fearless.
Yeah.
Mistakes are going to happen. You know what you do when you make a mistake? Do your very best not to do it again. But you have to believe that effort overcomes mistakes all the time. And I wanted that in my players' minds. Just visualize, Shawn, you're playing middle linebacker for us. And you hear the coaches out there saying, watch the run, watch the pass. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do that. You are now paralyzed as a player. Mm-hmm. You are now not going to twitch. You're not going to play fast. If you're a receiver and you're like, what if I drop this pass? What if I run the wrong, you know, what if I go inside when I'm supposed to go outside? I would always say, whatever you do it full speed and we'll fix it.
Do it full speed.
Because effort overcomes mistakes. Not most of the time. It's an all the time. That's a culture. And when you say maximum effort, what a great thing to teach a young kid. You know what? You were gonna drop a pass, man. Don't worry about it.
No.
Come back and go harder. The question my dad, and this is when I was a little kid, he would always ask me, he said, this is a simple question. I know it's a complicated answer. Are you the hardest working person on your team? Mm-hmm. He never asked me if I'm the fastest. Never asked me if I'm the strongest. Because those are out of your hands a lot of times. And when he said, I've said this at least 10,000 times in the last 30 years, 38 years of coaching. Are you the hardest working person? And if not, I need to know why. And that takes your breath away.
That's amazing.
Especially if you're having an honest conversation. If it's someone that you're not real close with, they babble and you move on. But if it's someone like my child, like my son, Nate, I got a simple question for you, pal. Are you the hardest working guy there?
Wow.
And if not, I really need to know why. How can we fix that? Because that's the beautiful thing about this country. Hard work gets rewarded, Shawn.
Yeah.
I'll fight anybody on that.
I love it.
If you work hard, you get rewarded.
Oh, we'll come back to capitalism in a minute because you said something earlier, that caught my attention. But wow, so many.
So tell me, I want to hit you a little bit. So you were a young. I remember it was like yesterday. I remember because I got bombarded with people. And right. You remember those days. Coming through the University of Utah office was a Rolodex of people. Just, they wanted, it's all good people. But something stuck with me about you. And I remember Shelley also. And I want to say it was John Clark was my administrative assistant. And Brian Voltolini. Do you remember those two names?
Yeah.
And they came to me and they know me because we were together for a long time before Utah. And they said, you need to meet with this guy. This guy's, and he said, you guys got a lot in common.
Wow.
He's taken no prisoners in a position, and that's kind of what we do. We take no prisoners. Losing is not an option, so get that out of the way. And I was really intrigued. And then, I went on to Florida from there, but I followed you and Shelley, she's the love sack. So we just followed you. When you decided to go from average or not average, from medium to big, did it take your breath away? Was it a big risk involved?
Yeah. Wow. I think one of the struggles for Lovesac and myself has always been, look, we started as a big beanbag company. Like, have you ever heard of anything more ridiculous or unassuming or silly in your life, right? And so I don't think we've ever been taken totally seriously. I mean, our name is Lovesac, but me as an individual, I I feel connected to you for the same reason. Like, the medium may be strange. I'm not a football coach, the epitome of like masculinity, whatever. I'm like the beanbag boy. But my ambition was the same. It's like I fell into this thing. I didn't even mean to. People ask me, where's the first love sack? I don't even have it because I didn't keep it because I didn't even think this was going to become a thing. It was like a little side hustle. I kind of did it in college, just funny. But people kept liking it, and you can't deny that. And so you just have to chase it. And sometimes we fall into things we don't even necessarily mean to do. In fact, I'd be interested to hear, whether it was always your direction to coach football. We'll come back to that. But I fell into this thing, but my ambition at my core was to be the biggest, to win, just to absolutely dominate. And that's one thing I just really admired about how you coached. It wasn't just, hey, we're going to do our best. And look, you knew, and the A players know losing can happen. Losing will happen at some point. You lost a few games in your career, but the attitude is, I am going to win. I am going to make this the biggest, best possible outcome. And of course it's gone places now I couldn't have imagined, like Sactionals. I didn't even have that idea, and now what Lovesac has become, we're this Design for Life company, we're essentially making things you could have the rest of your life. That whole vision and our point of view on sustainability, none of this could have happened had my ambition not been there. And now I think we have a path to become a lifestyle brand that could become anything. I mean, as big as you can imagine, actually. And it may suck in the rest of my life. I may not get to retire because it's like sucking me in. But my ambition is the same. And so I think, there's the vehicle. For you, it was football. For me, it started with beanbags. But then there's the ambition and the desire. And look, maybe it's innate. I don't know. But that's how I've always felt.
Well, one thing, the reason I asked is because I think people listening to this, when I was at Notre Dame, I was offered the head coaching job at Bowling Green.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to do it.
Right.
I was fear overcame me. Like, what if I fail, I'm at Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
So I've reached I get this, the golden dome on my shirt. When I walk in the office, I go to the front of the line, but sometimes you got to step backwards and step forward. And sometimes you got to take that risk. It has to be educated. And when I see, you could have lost it all.
Yeah.
You're a beanbag guy that was killing it. Now all of a sudden you start going into some, I've seen your Sactionals and I've seen all that stuff. And I mean, never really been done before.
Right.
What if the market doesn't like it? You're out. All this work that you put into, and I think that's where, and I've mentored people in the coaching profession. Don't jump at anything, but jump at the right one. And don't let fear scare you. Once again, be educated about it. Don't just, don't be frivolous about it. Go take someone offers you a head coaching position at some place that's not going to support you financially, that's not going to support you. You can't get players there. Don't do it. Don't care if you're Newt Rockney, it's not going to make it.
Yeah.
But I've had other people just get too fearful.
Right.
And not take that step.
Not take that risk. I
was curious about you.
Well, how do you develop that fearless mindset? Like it's one thing to kind of have it and have instincts for it, but whether it's in yourself or others, or when you feel it creeping up, and you're tempted to take the easy path, how do you tamp it down? How do you develop a mindset against fear?
The first thing is prayer, and I try to get guidance from a greater source.
Awesome.
I'm married to an awesome person for it's going to be 34 years, and never made a decision like that without her and looking her right in the eyes. And then I'm one of those people that I investigate really, really hard. You know, in your world, I can't speak to. I kind of know the makings of a great culture and a great team, but the logistical, the finances and all that stuff, I don't understand that part of it, but I do understand the team building part. I took Utah and everybody got mad at me.
Hmm.
I mean, it was even my closest friends, Lou Holtz and Earl Bruce, was my mentors at the time, and I remember they were going to try to get me lower level Big Ten jobs, and I remember when I took Utah, they both my mentors were very angry.
Wow.
And my athletic director at Bowling Green, I mean, we were like this, and I mean, like really pissed
And
off.
explain that for people who aren't necessarily close to college football. Like, why? Like, what about that move frustrated them?
Well, yeah, Utah was asleep. Was asleep.
Mm-hmm.
They had a great coach, Ron McBride, but they were a 5-5, 7-5. They won 8 games once in a while. They're in the Mountain West Conference. Not many. They weren't on TV very much. Right. They had the reputation of the LDS issue with you couldn't get black players and all the above. And I had two very successful years at Bowling Green. I started getting all these phone calls about jobs. And Shelley loved the West. We spent 6 years in Fort Collins, Colorado. And I knew about Utah, and I knew about Ron McBride, that he was a good recruiter. So I knew there had to be good players there. I did some research. They had good players. And then what really did it, Chris Hill invited me out, Dr. Matchin, the president. And I went and looked around. And Colorado State at the time was the #1 program in that conference.
Wow.
They had a small stadium. They had no resources. They had a small recruiting budget, and they had a very limited fan base because Colorado is a very most people that move to Colorado, so it's not a fan base that really grew up watching them. So it's a very small, and they were the king of the hill.
Interesting.
I fly out to Utah, and I walk into a place called the Burbage Center, the Academic Center. It's one of the most beautiful buildings I've ever seen. Yeah. I look at the recruiting budget. I look at the money that's available. I look at the fans. One thing about University of Utah, there's a lot of loyal Utes. Those are people that grew up there. That's their team.
Yeah, for sure.
And then what finally got me, Shawn, is I rented a car, asked for a car from the AD on my trip, and I drove up towards Sandy. I can't remember the name of that street that overlooks the valley.
Right. And
I had to see. And the number 2 million stuck with me. There are 2 million people in the Salt Lake community.
You're right.
Not Salt Lake City, but just around.
Yeah, Greater Salt Lake.
And I looked out there and I said, "You tell me we can't sell tickets to this many people. You tell me that we can't fill that stadium.
We did. You did.
You tell me that we can't get this thing rocking and rolling." And I remember I prayed right there on the side of the road, looked down at all these lights, and I took the job.
Wow.
I said, we can fill that stadium.
You saw
and up to that point, I think that, they had 22,000 people per game, and then you can't get a ticket now.
Well, so what I find so interesting about what you just shared is, because I asked you the question, how do you overcome that fear? And you came back with, I did my research, which sounds like a really, it's not like you, I mean, you first you start with prayer, which, is a shared habit. It's my rule, right? Begin my day on my knees. And it's changed my life, of course, to live that way. But to go to preparation of all things, let's get spiritual, right? If you are prepared, you shall not fear, right? And so by doing all that research, it's interesting, as opposed to just listening to only your mentors, which you did, as opposed to just, I don't know, soul searching. You went out, you did the research, you put yourself, you looked at the situation in detail, and somehow it sounds like, the confidence grew from that. And I think that, so it's more than just mantras, and it's more than just, pep talks, and it's more than just being, super strong. You put in some work to get there. And I think that that's notable. That's interesting.
This is interesting too, Shawn, that I speak on this a little bit, and that is that the ultimate work environment is low expectations, great talent, and great people. The worst work environment is high expectations and bad work ethic.
Wow.
And I walked into an environment at Utah And I thought it would be this way, but Ron McBride, there were really good people in that program. Not good, not, I should say not really good. I mean, great people. We pushed them. I don't know if you remember, all the stories are true. We locked the doors in a weight room. We covered them with,
Right.
my attempt was to get people to leave if they don't want to put in the work ethic. And what I found out is they were willing to put in the work. And we were picked to finish last in that conference.
Wow.
Think about that.
That's amazing.
And I think we went 24-2 in the next 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Think about that.
That's incredible.
And no expectations. And then what happens is when you start to win, Shawn, like you probably, when you started Lovesac, you had, maybe you had high expectations, but those around you were just ready to go to work.
Right.
And then what happens is you got to be careful, because we won in our first year, won the conference. First time we won the conference, I think, in 60 years.
First year.
So what happened? What happens?
Expectations.
The expectation levels change.
Yeah.
You better match it with work ethic, or you're going to have what? That bad environment I told you about. So let's do it again. So low expectations, great work ethic. That's the best environment you can ever have. Then what happens because you got great work ethic, you are going to get better. Everybody starts getting better. And then you win something. Expectations do this. And here's where I've had troubles too. If that work ethic doesn't match your expectations, you are now in that environment that no one wanted.
Wow.
High expectations, low work ethic. So I would always challenge. I mean, we got to here.
So you got to keep your work ethic above the expectation level. So then as you stepped up, as you made the choice to then jettison in a safe situation, you had just crushed it, Utah, you can win that conference. You could probably do it again and again and again. You then throw yourself into the lion's den, man, into the gator pit, and then further into, the central Ohio. I mean, come on. Oh my gosh. So then, how do you navigate that?
Well, you said you have to start, if your work ethic does not match your expectations, you're going to fail. I mean, and it's not maybe, you will fail.
Wow.
There's only 2,000 years of research you can do on that. Once again, if your work ethic or your expectations are greater than your work ethic, that is going to fail. And all you got to do is watch businesses around this country. You got to watch teams around this country. That's what they want to blame the players. They want to blame the coaches. No, what's happened is your expectations are higher than your work ethic.
Success. And so the way you put it, your own success is what creates the situation that ultimately brings your downfall, because expectations are driven by that.
So here's my psychology degree working for you. So let's go back to the ultimate work environment, right? Low expectations, high work ethic. How do people feel in the environment? How do they're thrilled. They're excited about work. They know that they can do better than what people are saying about them. You got great work ethic. People are just working and grinding and scratching and clawing and enjoying the fruits of success. Okay, so that's the ultimate work environment. Here we go going. Okay, now what happens? High expectations, low work ethic, you're not going to achieve, so that brings disappointment, frustration, anger.
Yeah.
People are really down, and so and I've witnessed it myself.
Oh, yeah.
And it's you as a leader, you got to change it, but if the leader is not willing to identify this, I mean, it's that simple.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Watch this. Ultimate work environment, absolute failure.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
And it's tragic.
And it's all because of
I've witnessed these top programs, they're undefeated all season, and one game and it destroys them. You have people in tears, you have like foaming at the mouth. I mean, you have anger. It's like you just had a better experience than 99.9% of everyone involved in the sport. But the expectations are so high. So how do you manage it when you're now at the top echelon? Because you've been there numerous times. You've tasted it more than almost anyone. How do you manage the psychology, Urban, then when you do get to the top? Because I can tell you from my side, like I told you, we began on the lawn of the University of Utah, selling to friends and family. And now we're a publicly traded company on NASDAQ and you know what? The stakes are high and investors expect a lot. And it's not a joke. So how do you think of managing at the highest levels once you're there?
You know, that I'm probably not the guy to talk to about that.
Oh, come on.
Because in all seriousness, that broke me down in Florida.
Well, tell me about it.
You know, I had health issues. I became addicted to sleeping medication. I lost weight. I was overwhelmed. You know, when we were scratching and clawing and fighting and building, and I don't want to give you the names because it's not fair, but I went on a year-long search. I talked to some of the great coaches that I knew, and what happens is you find out you're not the lone wolf. And that a lot of high-end executives, a lot of high-end coaches went through that. All of a sudden you work, you scratch your claw, and they hand you this crystal ball trophy and you win it. And you're like, wait a minute, is that it? And then that's all that becomes acceptable. And so I had some mental health issues. I stepped away from Florida at a young age because I was scared I was killing myself.
Yeah.
You know, I was having chest pains. I was rushed to a hospital one time. I couldn't sleep. I lost 37 pounds one year.
Wow.
I couldn't enjoy life. And I said, I'm done. You know, we did it. We did it twice, actually. So we, in 2 out of 3 years, won a national championship. My third year after that, I said, I'm done. A friend of mine died of a heart attack. I don't want to say his name either, but he was one of my dear friends in the coaching profession. And I thought, I'm not going to my family's too important for me. I don't enjoy this anymore. So how do you manage that? You know, and then I went to Ohio State and I managed it better, you know, because I was broken at Florida.
Yeah.
I went through a time for about a 6-month period that, Shawn, I never really talked to you much about it, but I was in a bad position. You know, Shelley's a psychiatric nurse and she tried to help me through it. I'm a psychology major and I knew it was happening. I just couldn't pull myself out of this feeling that I was, you know, I was living this unhealthy lifestyle. Something's going to happen to me, and for what?
Wow.
We already did it. So Ohio State was much better. Because I went through it, I did better. But I'm not one of those people that, if I wrote a book, we wrote one book, but I'll never write on a book how to handle high expectations because I'm still searching for
Wow.
I think that's really, really hard, Shawn, and very few people can do that.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's incredibly humbling to have someone, you know, again, top 3 winningest coaches of all time. And that's your response to how do you handle high expectations. But look, I'm a big fan of humility, not always the best bastion, but I've gotten my teeth kicked in, you know, not to compare my situation to yours, but you've read my book, you know the story. Lovesac cratered. Like after our highest highs, you know, we were forced into a Chapter 11 reorg, bankruptcy. And I had just won $1 million on TV. I'm Richard Branson's golden boy. You know, I'm kind of like crowned this, you know, billionaire's protege. And then like months later, I'm in bankruptcy in the state of Utah, which means you think everyone knew, you know, your football program because I had been on Fox national TV. I was like a local little household name in the little state of Utah that, you know, whatever, for a minute. And right on the heels of that. So, I mean, the timing couldn't have been more ugly and embarrassing. And so I know a little bit about how that feels. Maybe not the same as you, but I had to do the same thing, kind of just find my way and dig my way out, and went through really dark times that I've never really been able to explain to anyone, because it's hard to explain to someone, you know, what that feels like and how difficult.
What you find out, Shawn, and you're going to find out if you do ever get there again, or when you talk to people, especially like-minded people. I'm saying the majority of people have gone through, maybe not the extent that I went through, but the phone calls that I got and conversations I had with some of the most incredible people have gone through that.
Right.
Once again, it's all varies the level. But, you know, when you're chasing a dream and you get the dream, that's a really tough one. And you find out, I remember real quickly, I told my father, who was obviously very close with him, and in the locker room after we won our first national championship, I looked at him and I said, you know what's really cool about this? For the rest of my life, I'm going to just have fun doing this. I'm not going to get stressed out because we did it.
You did it.
And that may be the most untrue statement ever to come out of my mouth.
Wow.
Because what happens, Shawn, is that becomes the expectation.
Mm.
That becomes anything less than championship level effort. And I was a maniac. People who work with me said, "My God, what's happened to you?" You know,
Wow.
and so that's the great thing about chasing. I much rather chase than catch.
Mm.
I like to chase.
I know. And then you catch it, and what do you do with it, right? That's so crazy, man. And so to some degree, maybe I'm just reflecting as I'm listening to you, perhaps that's where I've been lucky. Because in your world, there really sort of is this endpoint, right? There's this thing called the championship, and then the whole thing just repeats itself, right? In my world, in business, there really doesn't have to be an endpoint. Like we became the undisputed beanbag king, yay, and then we invented sectionals, and that took us a decade to figure that out. But here we are now, probably, believe it or not, Little Love Sack with the best-selling couch invention in the United States of America in real time by the numbers. And to me, what's weird, and I'm not saying this to sound really cool, I feel like we're just getting started. I feel like it's going to suck another 25 years of my life to try to now achieve what we could achieve. And that's one of the neat things about what I'm doing, and about, I think, perhaps, the playing field I get to play on, is because I can just keep moving the goalposts further and further and further out. So I'm always chasing. I'm always the underdog. Like right now, we are the tiniest of the kind of companies I want to build. Our big, hairy, audacious goal, to quote Jim Collins, I'm sure you probably read Good to Great, all these books, but he claims every organization needs to have a big, hairy, audacious goal, like bigger than just, let's say, just winning the national championship. And our big, hairy, audacious goal at Lovesack is to build the most beloved lifestyle brand in the world, which, from a kind of obscure beanbag company that makes furniture, like, that's a wacky thing to say. I mean, you got Nike, you got Apple, you got, the Lululemons, you got lifestyle. And so, but I'm not joking around. I'm really not joking. I share it publicly because I know it sounds ridiculous today, but our ambitions are the highest. And to my belief system, even though I don't know how we're going to get there, there is always a way. Like, someone else did it. Phil Knight did it. I mean, he's amazing, but like, if someone else has done it, why not me? That's my point of view. And I know that sounds super audacious and maybe bluster. I don't know, but that is a difference. That is interesting. Like you were stuck in this place where the high is actually kind of capped in a way. Is that all you can do now is win a national championship there, And so it's kind of an interesting dynamic. Like you probably didn't reflect on that until you got there, in the sense that that was the playing field you chose to play on, and it has different dynamics than other playing fields.
I wonder if I'd still be coaching today if we didn't win it all. Shelley's often asked me that, because she saw the change. We won the second national championship at the University of Florida. And right after the game, I go in and lock the door. We're celebrating. Wow. I go in and actually lock the door because I didn't want to be bothered. Mm. And I started emailing and texting recruits because
I knew it.
We were on. It was on to the next.
Yep.
It wasn't sit back and enjoy this. And
wow.
When we won the national championship at Ohio State, I remembered. I had to train myself. Enjoy this. Let the players don't become that maniac that you were at Florida, where I hate to say it like this, but I've kind of heard stories because it was like a time warp for me. But we really didn't enjoy those great rewards.
Wow.
The player, some people did, but I was so obsessed with doing it again, and again, because that's how you're going to be measured. And not the fans,
right.
Me. The way I was raised is that's why it just, I'll tell you, someone listening to this is going to learn something. I just learned a ton. In your world, you can keep moving the goalpost. My goalposts don't move.
But see, that never even occurred to me until, like, I'm sitting here listening to you, and I think, how interesting is it, the concept of, often we get thrown into things, or like in my case, in your case, we sort of like end up on a path that we didn't even necessarily mean to, but we're there. did you even consider what path you're on and what the dynamics of that path are? Like sometimes I feel super, super lucky. Like, let me give you an example. I started in our first store, we had a couch. People would ask about the couch. We had the couch there to look pretty next to the love sacks. So then all of a sudden we're in the couch business. And of course, being stupid, we're like, why can't we make a washable, changeable couch that could ship in a box? Like, and all the couch experts told us no, blah, blah, blah. It's all in the book. But my point is, again, it wasn't strategy that I ended up in the couch category. But now in, 2015, 16, I'm seeing Warby Parker, Casper, the whole direct consumer movement. And I realize, holy crap, I am sitting on a mushroom cloud. I'm sitting on a huge ticket product. Someone spends 5, 10, 15,000 with us, a whack. I have the only one that ships in a box. The direct consumer movement, the internet's all right. Like all these things, and so in a way, like I just got super lucky. But my point is like the couch category turned out to be a really great place to compete. And by the way, like I've got tons of copycats, whatever now. So I've got to do the next thing and I've got to win at the next thing. Cause that's the expectation, to your point. But at least I get to keep finding the next thing. And there's no end. There is no national championship for me. I mean, unless my ambition ends at being the couch guy. But my point is, does any idiot at 20 something years old even take the time to stop and think about what is the field I'm playing on and what are the dynamics? Because maybe accidentally you chose a path that took all of your leadership capacity, which is tremendous, and all of your natural ability and funneled it into a bright spotlight, amazing accolades. Sure. But imagine what you could have done in business, or imagine what you could have done, where the dynamics were different. It's interesting to contemplate.
It really is. And I mean, I learned a lot right now today. And I've actually dipped my toe in a business. I just never really had that interest. I've always been, I was always about that player, somehow trying to make that player great. But I have great respect for that. And I tell you, Shawn, that what's interesting too, and it'd be interesting to we'll do a Q&A with anybody who watches this. I knew just the way my makeup, I had a shelf life. Mm. I have Nick Saban's a great friend of mine. Yeah. He's 70 years old.
I know. What the heck?
I mean,
he's a vampire.
I had 55 back when I was in my 30s because of the way I worked. And I'm not saying that everybody works hard. I don't want to say, well, he says he works hard. I didn't say that. The way I was a maniac about everything I did. When it was recruiting, if we lost a recruit, it's like we lost a game.
Yeah.
And it was like, you probably heard about it and you saw it at Utah. And I had people around me a lot like that. And then it just makes you think, what would, when 55 years old was the target for me, because I love my family. I love my children. I felt like I did do the best. I thought I did the best I can to be around, and we have a great family. But I want to give back to them now. It's their time. My time's done.
Yeah.
Now it's my name. I'm Buddy. I'm not even coach anymore. Buddy's my name for my grandkids. For me. And so I'm. It's funny. Everybody, like former coaches will come over my house and they're like, wait a minute. Yeah, they're like, they call you what? And I said, I'm Buddy. I'm the grandfather of 4 children, and I'm loving every second of it. So.
Well, you probably saw this in the book, but another one of my little realizations, Shawnisms, everything else is dust. And talking to a guy who's held the Crystal Trophy, talking to a guy who's, had the biggest spotlight and the greatest accolades. I know it's not our topic for today, but I'd be interested to just hear your thoughts on that phrase. Because to me, at some point, I came to the same realization. And it's why I'm living in San Diego right now. Like, this probably will suck in the next 25 years of my life. I'll probably end up like Nick Saban, in my world. But recognizing that I only have a minute with my kids where they're actually with me, and I don't want to miss it. And so I'm trying to balance that. So I it's something I celebrate. Everything else, even Lovesack, as hard as that is to say, leaving my mouth, is dust. It's dust. Like college football is as much as, right?
Oh, sure.
And that's where I think you made, I don't think you made the right decisions for you, and they're different for you and for Nick Saban, for everyone. They're different decisions, but like, how could you argue with that? like you're still alive. You still have, all of your capacities to build a culture with your family now and your grandkids. Like, thankfully, you made the right call there. I believe.
I once again, a lot of prayer, reflection, but I know I made the right call.
Yeah.
And when I see the joy in my family, which is, like you said, it's dust. I go back to, we lost a game in 2003 to New Mexico. I didn't think the sun was going to come up.
I remember.
And I remember Kyle Whitney and him calling me on the phone on the way home in my car, and we both just tried to wrap our mind around what happened. That was the last game we lost. We didn't lose another one after that. But I look back now, and I have Utah fans, and you remember back that New Mexico game. I was like, "What are you talking about? It really is dust. It goes away.
Yeah.
It's, your family doesn't, but it's. I loved how you said that. I love sex tremendous, but it's dust.
I know, man, and it like I said, it's like painful because I'm also I care deeply about the people and my team and the wealth and that we're creating and all of it, and I care about our mission, all that stuff. But every human, man, in the end, every human has the opportunity to build true gold, around them in the ways that really, really matter. And so it's so fascinating to see someone that got to experience, those types of highest highs, the types that, millions celebrate. And if you had to trade it, I already, I'd love to hear it. If you had to trade one for the other and those kids and grandkids now, how do you?
Yeah, there's no trade.
There's not, and it's dust.
In fact, I got three wonderful kids. I mean, think about this too. We went 3 for 3 on spouses for our kids.
Yeah.
And I think you talk about your perfect soulmate, Shelley. I missed a lot of stuff, and that broke me down. That broke me down when I would miss a softball game, a volleyball game, a graduation and I had to. But that's it. Like you said, it's all dust. But the good thing is, I'm at the age where I'm pouring into it now, and I'm still like, I'm not 84 years old.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with 84 years old, but reality is your life changes.
So you could have, just to maybe wrap up on a personal note, although I did want to there's some other things I want to ask you, but there is always a way, now on the personal side, right? Like we've talked about being a motivational coach, a leader, all these types of comments. What about on the personal side? Like there is always a way. Like you survived. You physically survived. How do you think about that?
You got to give me that again.
So the topic, right? There is always a way.
There's always a way.
And you faced times in your life where your life was on the line, your physical life, and therefore your ability to enjoy the parts of your life that aren't dust was at stake, on the brink. But there is always a way. And perhaps, I don't want to speak for you, but the way for you was to walk away. I mean, that's pretty abrupt. I mean, how do you think about the idea of there is always a way and not losing sight of the things that really matter?
I reached a very serious point, like you said. It wasn't a financial point. It wasn't I've never been driven by that at all. It's always, trying to turn young people into very successful people and then build a program the school can be proud of. And when you reach that point where you really believe in your heart that you're damaging yourself and therefore going to damage your family, I know I made the right decision to Florida in 2000. I mean, as bad as it was that I left. I mean, we won 13-1, I believe, 13-1, and I stepped away because I really physically thought I was done. I thought there was something, and I was getting enough medical teams around me that I kind of knew that I was in a serious spot.
Yeah.
So I did the decision that was best for myself and my family.
See, but I think
that was take some time.
I think that's
Take some
critical.
time.
Yeah, I think that's critical to highlight. Like, there is always a way doesn't just mean I will run through brick walls. It also means, to quote Kenny Loggins, right? You know when to fold them. And you still came back and had another shot, and of course did amazing things. And my point is, there is always a way. It may not just
Always.
be achievement.
Well, you got to be a person that has priorities in your mind. If your priority is to make, was it 20 million, 30 million, whatever that number is, that was not mine. But when you reach that point where I felt like, and this is really interesting, Shawn. When I got to Ohio State, same thing. I knew, and I told the athletic director, I'm not built to do this for 20 years.
Mm.
I just can't. I just accept it. And before he hired me, we had that conversation. Wow. I was going to go fulfill my contract, which ironically was a 7-year contract. I did fulfill my 7 years, but the difference that I did at Utah, I had a successor. His name was Kyle Whittingham.
Yeah.
At Florida, I did not.
Mm.
Florida, because it happened so fast, and I felt like I'd left that place and left a lot of my colleagues that I worked with, and they did such a good job, and some lost their jobs. That destroyed me. So when I got to Ohio State, every year I would meet with my boss, the AD, and I would have a succession plan in place. I had it for several years, and then when I found the right guy, my Kyle Whittingham, or a guy named Ryan Day, who's there now, no one lost a job. Everybody continued. The program's still thriving. A school that I love and where I'm from.
Yeah.
Having that succession plan is another topic probably down the road. But I didn't have that at Florida.
Yeah.
I did have that at Ohio State. And the difference between the two programs, I just had a plan at Ohio State because of what I went through at Florida. And it was, and I feel so much better about the way I left Ohio State because everybody's there. And they're still thriving.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, again, I think it's easy to conflate, a statement like there is always a way with sort of like a last minute, physical, hard effort to achieve something. But the way can, of course, include plans and long-term, painstaking efforts to, like as you described, to put in place the apparatus beyond just we're going to win the next game no matter what. I think like that's also of course under celebrated because it's so less sexy. But let's go to the sexy part for 1 second. You're down, you're behind, it's fourth quarter. How do you as a leader in those moments where it's do or die, how do you rally the troops around the idea that there is always a way? Because you lived those so many times. So how does that happen? Is it just bluster? Is it just like energy? Is it just like positivity? Is there any secret you have to creating a there is always a way attitude across the whole team that actually results in success? Any secrets there?
Yeah. It's something that it's a militaristic model. You are what your training is. When we always would say when contact is made, and what's contact? Contact in football is this.
Yeah.
Contact is also when you're down by 7 with 2 minutes left. But when contact is made, everybody reverts back to their training.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody. When you're in your board meetings and so you're faced with some situation that you've never covered. However, if you've been trained the right way, you know how to maneuver it. Mm. And I would always, our practices were legendarily hard. I mean, I took the Michael Jordan approach. One of the greatest quotes of all time is, I'm going to paraphrase Michael Jordan. We had it all around the facility. The reason I practiced so hard, I want the game to be easy. Mm. I knew in 2006, my safety, we ironically played Ohio State when I was at Florida. The score was 41-14. We beat them for a national title. In the middle of the third quarter, where the player came up to me screaming at me and said, practices are harder than this game. And I thought to myself, that's what I wanted.
Then we won.
When contact is made in business, in life, in football, you revert back to not what you want it to be, but your training. If you are not trained, it's not going to.
It has to be.
I'm not talking about.
I love that. So it has to be muscle memory. It's not just everyone buck up. We're gonna push even harder.
We're gonna go.
No.
No, it's not. We're gonna go. No. I would always go around. And I said, "You've been trained for this moment.
Yeah.
You've been trained since January.
Yeah.
This is a 8-month investment for a freshman, for a varsity, for a third-year guy, for 3 years. You've been trained for this moment. Now finish your job. You've done this. We've done this over and over and over again. You've been trained mentally and physically and that's when you hear that, you see almost a change of look in their face, like, you're damn right, we've been trained for this.
So it's calmer.
There's some good stuff going to happen here in a minute because we all been trained. And I would hear them talk amongst each other.
Wow.
We've been here. We can do this. We've been trained to do this.
Wow. That's amazing. So it's calmer. It's power in muscle memory. It's not just a dramatic outpouring of effort.
Hey, Shawn, I got something else for you. Yeah. So real quick. Confidence is a funny word. I mean, I think it's one of the most misunderstood words in the English language.
All right.
It's something that you can achieve nothing without confidence. But there's only one thing worse than lack of confidence. There's only one thing worse. Any idea?
Overconfidence?
False confidence.
False confidence.
A coach, a parent, or someone telling you can do it, but you haven't trained them to do it. Think about that for a minute. You talk about destructive mentality. False confidence is destructive. Lack of confidence, you fail, and you gotta build them back up. And confidence, usually, not all the time, but high percentage, you're going to succeed. So you got confidence, you got lack of confidence. That's okay. Everybody's got lack of confidence. That's our job. That's leaders. We got to build you up. However, false confidence, that's going to be a bad ending. And that's the leader's fault.
So true confidence then. So, there's this phrase that I don't hate, confidence is free. But if I were to actually articulate it more correctly,
I'd probably disagree.
Yeah. So projecting confidence is free. True confidence, however, comes from, like you said, preparation.
I think confidence is, usually the term free. I think it's incredibly expensive.
I love it.
Confidence is built.
Yeah.
Confidence takes time. Confidence is effort, time, blood, sweat, tears, fatigue, pain, all the things that go into get you to that point. So I think confidence, man, I'll tell you, you give me a truly confident team, we'll go play anybody anywhere. You give me a team that lacks confidence, I'm okay with that. We got to build them up. You give me a team that's overconfident, I don't want any, that's one of these.
Time out.
Because we're about to get our doors blown off.
Amazing. Okay, last bit, I promise. I've got so many things, so many ways I could learn from you. But you brought up, this idea kind of capitalism, survival of the fittest, maybe merit. I feel like this whole realm of discussion is somehow been sidelined and even vilified a little bit in our current state of affairs. I'm so glad you brought it up because, some of these topics now are strangely controversial even. So tell me about that. And maybe as it relates to the idea of there is always a way, but this idea of, well, the roots of capitalism. You brought it up. Tell me how you feel about that.
I equate capitalism to meritocracy. That was basically everything I believed in. I was raised, and I believe that this country was founded on that. And there's a thing that Tim Kite, my leadership consultant, we would share this with our players, and we would say that genetics shape you, circumstances influence you, but decisions define you. So let's go backwards again. So genetics shape you. The reality is God has a plan for every one of us. He makes LeBron James 6'10" and runs like a great athlete. He has other kids that they're in wheelchairs and their genetics shape you. You have no decision about your genetics. You can't pick your parents. You can't pick your size, height, weight, speed. You can't. So genetics, are they important? Absolutely, they shape you. This is where I think there's a conflict. Circumstances influence you. Circumstances, I'm very fortunate. I was raised by a mom and a dad in a very tough environment where education was everything. And I got a C one time in English my sophomore year. And I'm glad I was in those circumstances because I didn't get a C again because I was trained that way. So circumstances, genetics define you, circumstances influence you. However, circumstances don't define you. Mm. If you come from a tough background, of course that matters. It may be a little tougher road along the way, but it doesn't define you. What defines you are the decisions you make. There's people that come from great backgrounds, make some bad decisions, and they struggle the rest of their life. I've coached people that maybe didn't have the greatest family structure growing up. Maybe they had a tough environment, but along the way, what they do? Good decision, good decision, good decision, work ethic. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to work harder. And they're doing great. Mm-hmm. I'm very biased, and I feel very strong about this. I don't think there's any other place in the world that has the same opportunity for people. Yeah. If you do that. There's certain countries around here that it doesn't matter how hard you work, you're stuck. I don't believe that happens here. I've witnessed it over the years, and that was something I tried to train our players over and over again, is that, we get that degree, and then we did these things called Real Life Wednesdays where we'd get them internships, we'd get them shadow opportunities, because I believe if you go in there and you make an impression by work ethic, you're set. Yeah. And then final thought on capitalism, and I believe this with my heart, that there's only, in my mind, two things that solves every problem. And that's education and experience. Hmm. And you can't take that away from people. Everything else you can take from them. Everything else is dust. I'd say education is not dust. You take that, that's part of your DNA. Yeah. And you give every person a great education and you get them some experience, they have what helps, it's called a job, and they can provide for their families. You take away education and experience, and that's why I get very angry when they, like you see some of the stuff on television when all these bad people in Chicago. I'm like, wait a minute. I don't think they're bad people. You know what they're lacking? Education and experience. Wow. That's, if you want to be a great coach, great teacher, great politician, don't give stuff away. Get people educated. Get people experience. There has to be a way, Shawn. There has to be a way.
Well, there is always a way. That's the point, right? There's always a way. And I'd love to just wrap on this idea that you brought up around decisions, because we are a lot of things, like you said, our genetics, our circumstances, but of all those things, there's only one of those things that we actually have any control over, and it's our decisions. That's all we are. That's all a business is. You may be thrown into whatever category, whatever industry, in your case, football, which has its dynamics, as we talked about. In my case, I don't know, the furniture industry, like what? Brands, that has its dynamics. I can't control any of it. My competition's out there. The dynamics are the dynamics. The only thing I have any control over is my decisions and our decisions. And when people start owning up to that, in the meritocracy that's provided, in the opportunity that's provided by capitalism to build wealth, to lift people out of poverty, to create, all driven by your decisions. And for that reason alone, I am a firm believer that there is always a way, no matter what it is, no matter how hard it is. Everything is possible. And if someone has done it, you can do it. That's my point of view. And I feel like you took me to school. Holy cow. I've written so many notes. I feel like I Utes. Still got the Utes hat.
We got to do it again, Shawn. I really enjoyed it, man. I learned a ton today.
I'm so grateful.
I feel better about myself today. I'm going to share my thoughts with my family after our discussion today. That was awesome.
I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to call you a friend. I'm so grateful to learn from you. You can follow Urban, as I do, on social media and Instagram, at Urban Meyer Coach, on the home for my favorite of all television programming of any kind, college football on Fox. And you can get his book, Above the Line, Lessons in Leadership from a Championship Program. Thank you to the coach of coaches, the whisperer of winners, the king of culture, and a generally good guy who was generous and humble enough to spend the last hour with you and me. Thank you, Urban, so much for your time, your wisdom, your energy. Grateful to be with you.
Thanks, Mark.